Welcome to CV Studios. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Helps to keep us motivated and make more of these videos for you guys. Let's start today's video.
People often tell me I look like I stepped out of a fairy tale. My long golden hair cascades down my back in soft waves, and my eyes, blue like a summer sky, draw compliments from strangers. My skin is clear and glowing, though I owe that to hours of skincare routines and my mother's insistence on sunscreen. I'm tall for my age, with a lithe figure honed by years of dance classes and a smile I've learned to perfect for the judges. I'm 18 now, and I've been competing in beauty pageants since I could walk. The trophies lining my bedroom shelves glimmer in the sunlight, but lately they feel more like relics than achievements. It's not that I don't enjoy the glitz and glamour anymore, it's just monotonous. My life feels like a script I didn't write, especially since I live with just my mom. Don't get me wrong, she's great, supportive, always there at the front row, beaming at me during competitions. But our small, quiet house in the suburbs and her endless chatter about meal prep and neighborhood gossip leave me craving something more. Adventure, maybe excitement. Sometimes I stare out my bedroom window, wondering if the world beyond my perfectly arranged life might hold the answers I'm looking for. Hey, I'm Jane. I'm the type of girl who thrives on excitement and fun. Some people like peace and quiet, but not me. I like when everything is exciting. That's why, lately, life at home has been so unbearable. My mom is so quiet. My mom is the quietest person I know. It's almost like she exists in the background of life, moving softly, speaking only when necessary, and always keeping to herself. She's not shy exactly. It's more like she's retreated into a world where words are scarce. It wasn't always like this, though. When I was younger, she was full of energy and light, the kind of person everyone noticed the moment she walked into a room. She laughed freely, her voice carrying over the sound of music at family gatherings. She was the one who told stories so vividly that everyone hung on her every word, the life of the party, and my biggest cheerleader. Back then, her eyes sparkled with the sort of joy that made her seem invincible. She'd dance around the kitchen while cooking dinner, spinning me in circles when I begged for her attention. I remember thinking she was the most alive person I'd ever met. But something shifted when my dad left. I was too young to understand at the time, but I know now that his leaving broke something in her. She stopped singing in the mornings and no longer stayed up late, chatting on the phone with her friends. Gradually, the light in her eyes dimmed, and the energy that had once made her seem larger than life disappeared. Now, she moves through her days with quiet determination. She's still supportive and loving, but there's a weight to her presence that wasn't there before. She listens more than she speaks, her answers short and thoughtful, as though she's saving her words for when they truly matter. Sometimes I catch her staring off into space, her hands still and her face unreadable. I wonder what she's thinking about, if she's remembering how she used to be or just trying to make peace with who she is now. I miss the version of her who used to sing me to sleep with silly songs she made up on the spot, or surprise me with spontaneous road trips. But at the same time, I admire her resilience. Life threw her something hard, and while it changed her, it didn't break her. She's still here, even if she's quieter now. Maybe she found a new kind of strength in her silence. But sometimes I wish she'd let herself be loud again, if only for a little while. One night, after yet another boring day, I'd had enough. I sat on the edge of my bed, hugging my knees to my chest, listening to the crickets shout. That's when I had an idea. Aunt Lizzie, I whispered to myself. Aunt Lizzie is my mom's sister. She lives out in the countryside, in this beautiful, cozy house surrounded by fields and forests. Honestly, she reminds me so much of Mom in the past, when she was still fun. Visiting her has always felt like stepping into another world, a world where people are fun, happy, and free. I hadn't seen her in a while, but I figured a change of scenery might be exactly what I needed. The next morning, I brought it up at breakfast. Mom, I started hesitantly. Can I go stay with Aunt Lizzie for a while? Just for a change? She looked at me, startled. Mom's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips, and for a moment, I thought she'd argue about it. But instead, Mom sighed. Maybe that's not a bad idea, she said quietly. And just like that, it was settled. The drive to Aunt Lizzie's house was long and quiet. Mom hummed along to the radio. I didn't mind the silence. It gave me time to imagine the fun waiting for me. When we pulled into Lizzie's driveway, she was already outside, waving. She's one of those people who instantly makes you feel warm and welcome. With her curly brown hair, sun-kissed skin, and a smile that lights up her whole face, she's like a walking ray of sunshine. Jane, she called, pulling me into a hug. You've grown so much. And then there was them. Their names were Connor and Meyer, my cousins. The first time I saw Connor and Meyer again after years apart, it felt like my breath caught in my throat. I hadn't seen Aunt Lizzie or her sons in ages, and in my mind, Connor and Meyer were still the lanky boys with gap-toothed smiles and an obsession with comic books. But the two young men standing in front of me now were entirely different. Connor, the older one, had a rugged charm about him, broad shoulders, messy brown hair that looked effortlessly styled, and a grin that could make anyone's day brighter. Meyer, on the other hand, had a quieter intensity. His dark eyes seemed to see right through you, and he carried himself with a confidence that was hard to ignore. They were both devastatingly handsome, and it stunned me how much they'd grown. At first, I tried to brush off the fluttering in my chest, as nothing more than surprise at seeing them again. But the more time I spent around them, the harder it became to ignore the magnetic pull they had on me. Aunt Lizzie had brought them to our house for a long visit, and suddenly, my quiet little world didn't feel so boring anymore. I found myself going out of my way to get their attention. I started dressing up more than usual, choosing outfits that showed off my best features and spending extra time on my hair and makeup. I'd pretend to casually bump into them in the hallway or linger in the living room when I knew they were around. During meals, I'd laugh a little louder at their jokes and make sure to catch their eyes when I spoke. Connor seemed to enjoy the attention, always quick with a teasing remark or a playful nudge. Meyer was harder to read, but there was a quiet intensity in the way he listened when I spoke, as though he was trying to figure me out. That only made me want to be around him more. It wasn't long before they started including me in their adventures. Connor had a wild streak that made every outing exciting, while Meyer had a calm, steady presence that balanced him out. One afternoon, they invited me to go horseback riding with them, and I couldn't say yes fast enough. The three of us raced across the open fields, the wind in my hair and the sound of laughter echoing in the air. It was exhilarating, the kind of freedom I hadn't felt in years. Later, when we stopped to rest by a stream, Connor splashed water at me, his grin mischievous, while Meyer sat beside me, his arm brushing mine just enough to send a shiver down my spine. I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, but for the first time in a long while, I felt alive. And I couldn't help but wonder where this unexpected connection with Connor and Meyer might lead. The night we played Truth or Dare is one I'll never forget. It was one of those warm summer evenings where the air felt heavy with possibility. We were sitting in the cozy glow of the fire pit in Aunt Lizzie's backyard. Connor and Meyer lounging casually on the grass, their laughter contagious. The game started out light, silly dares like eating a marshmallow in one bite, or harmless truths about favorite movies. But then it was my turn, and Connor, with his mischievous grin, leaned in and asked, "Truth or dare, Jane?" I hesitated. All right. Out of the two of us, who do you like more? The question hit me like a punch. Meyer, who had been quietly watching, raised an eyebrow, a small smirk playing on his lips. My cheeks burned, and I felt the weight of both their gazes on me. I tried to laugh it off. What kind of question is that? Come on, Jane, we're waiting. I looked between them, my heart pounding. Fine, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I like both of you. The words hung in the air for a moment, and I immediately regretted saying them. Connor chuckled, his blue eyes sparkling with amusement. Both of us. That's a cop-out answer, Meyer smirked. She's just being diplomatic. They brushed it off so easily, turning the attention back to the game, but I couldn't shake the vulnerability of that moment. They acted like it was nothing, but for me, it was everything. I felt both relieved and disappointed, unsure of what to make of their reaction or my own feelings. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. The thought of the boys not noticing me hurt more than I wanted to admit. Before I could talk myself out of it, I threw on a hoodie and tiptoed down the hall to their room. Their door was slightly ajar, and I could see them sitting on their beds, scrolling through their phones. I knocked softly, and they looked up, surprised. Jane, what's up? I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. My hands were shaking. Can I talk to you? I asked. Sure, they said, setting their phones aside. What's on your mind? I took a deep breath, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. I like you, I blurted out. Really like both of you. Their expressions shifted from surprise to something softer, sympathy. Jane Corner said gently, You're amazing. Really, but you're our cousin. We can't. His words felt like a punch to the gut. I nodded quickly, trying to hold back tears. I tried protesting, but the boys had made up their mind. I don't know what I was thinking. Hey, don't be sad, Meyer said, standing up and putting a hand around my waist. You're brave for telling us how you feel. It is this time that I saw a different side of the boys I had never seen. Their eyes were so mischievous, I could just tell what he was thinking. I gave in into the soft hug, and before I knew it, Mayer's gentle lips were pressed against mine. He did it so gently that I could feel my cookie getting wetter and wetter by each second. He then gave me a gentle push, and I found myself on the bed. Corner then came close to me and he pulled off my panties, and for a moment I thought he was going to plunge it in me. He saw my frightened face, and he murmured, Relax, not tonight. The words were so reassuring, but they left me curious about exactly what he was planning on doing. He then bent over and put his tongue between my legs. Oh my God, I froze. I had never been sucked down, and for my first time, Corner really made it electrifying. There's this thing he would do with his tongue when he rolled it up and down that I found myself in the fourth dimension. While Corner was sucking me down, Mayers was playing with my nipples, gently biting on them. The whole experience felt electric. We then heard Aunt Lizzie calling for us, and I got too embarrassed to even look at them, so I just dressed up and ran out. The morning after, I couldn't even look at the boys. My cheeks burned every time I thought about the night before, the kiss, the makeout, their sucking. I replayed it over and over, each time feeling more embarrassed. I decided the best thing to do was avoid them entirely. At breakfast, I barely muttered a good morning before grabbing my plate and rushing to the farthest seat. When they tried to catch my eye, I stared at my food. Later, when Aunt Lizzie asked us to pick apples from the orchard, I pretended to have a headache. Anything to keep my distance. But the boys didn't let up. By the second day, they were knocking on my door. Jane, can we talk? There's nothing to talk about, I mumbled, not opening it. Please, they said, their voice softer now. We can't just ignore each other forever. Reluctantly, I opened the door. They were standing there, looking unsure but determined. About the other night, Meyer began. It was a mistake. We were caught up in the moment, and it shouldn't have happened. I nodded, the lump in my throat loosening slightly. Yeah, it was a mistake. Corner smiled, a little sadly. But we're still family, right? Right? I said. And for the first time, it felt okay.